Donald Trump has escalated his criticism of India, calling the bilateral trade relationship a one-sided disaster.
Differing views are now emerging from Trump's camp as India fiercely safeguards its economic interests.
Trump also attacked India for buying Russian oil and weapons after recently raising tariffs on Indian goods to 50%.
For months, warnings echoed that India's patience with Donald Trump was wearing thin. On September 6, 2025, those warnings became reality. Across Indian cities, furious crowds gathered burning effigies of Trump and setting American flags ablaze. Farmers, factory workers, and young people chanted against U.S. tariffs and accused Washington of humiliating India. The images beamed across Indian television were unmistakable. A once promising partnership with the United States is now in flames, literally. The most striking symbolism is not just the burning effigies, but the message they carry. Protest leaders said openly that Trump had insulted India's dignity. Farmers' unions in Punjab declared that tariffs on textiles, gems, and agricultural products are a direct attack on Indian livelihoods. Small shop owners joined in with one jeweler in Mumbai saying his export orders collapsed overnight after the latest tariff hike. He warned that if the U.S. thinks India will bend it, should think again. These demonstrations reflect not just anger, but a collective decision India is prepared to move on from Washington. Diplomatically, the collapse is even clearer. Reports confirm that Trump personally tried to call Prime Minister Narendra Modi 4 times over the last 2 weeks. Modi did not pick up. For seasoned observers, that is a diplomatic earthquake. Ignoring repeated calls from a sitting U.S. president signals a total break. Instead of taking those calls, Modi flew to China, where he sat alongside Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit. In India, television graphics ran split screens showing Trump alone on one side and Modi with Xi and Putin on the other, a visual narrative of shifting power. Economically, the rupture comes from what Indian media call a double dose of humiliation. First, Washington imposed a 25% tariff on Indian exports in early August. Then, on August 27th, Trump doubled the rate, bringing it to 50% on sectors like apparel, leather goods, furniture, gems, and chemicals. Trade economists warn that this could slash as much as 70% of exports in these categories, shrinking shipments from more than $60 billion down to less than $20 billion. The pain is concentrated in India's labor-intensive sectors, threatening millions of jobs. The people feeling the shock most immediately are India's small and medium enterprises. The India SME Forum reports that more than 50,000 small exporters are scrambling for survival. 57% are seeking alternative markets in Europe, Africa, and Latin America. 27% are reviving older trade ties with Southeast Asia. 16% are exploring outsourcing production to third countries to bypass tariffs. For many family-owned firms, the American market accounted for more than half their orders. One textile exporter in Surat explained, "We can't just replace the U.S. overnight. It will take years, and many of us won't survive." A leather goods maker in Kanpur added that his profit margins had already been cut by 30% due to higher raw material costs. And now with tariffs, we are looking at closure within 6 months if nothing changes. India's government has not been silent. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman announced a relief package on September 5th aimed at protecting exporters with special attention to SMEs. Trade Minister Piyush Goyal declared firmly that India will not bow down and pledged to capture new markets through fresh trade agreements. He underscored that Indian farmers and dairy workers remain his top priority. Behind the scenes, 4 specific support schemes are being designed to help firms shift supply chains and avoid collapse. The message is clear: India will not cave to American pressure. Goyal added that New Delhi is exploring an export promotion mission with direct subsidies to SMEs, noting that when Washington closes doors, we will open new ones elsewhere. The strategy is also geopolitical. Modi's trip to China marked his first in 7 years and symbolized a thaw in relations with Beijing. Standing next to Xi Jinping, Modi pledged to move forward on the basis of mutual trust and sensitivity. He even noted progress on the disputed Himalayan border, signaling a willingness to reset ties. In parallel, Modi met with Vladimir Putin to reinforce long-standing Russian ties. Together, this alignment sends a powerful message that India will not be cornered by U.S. tariffs, but instead will join a broader global South coalition. Indian newspapers described it as a pivot forced by tariffs but accelerated by pride. Trump, sensing the backlash, attempted to change tone. In public remarks, he called Modi a great friend and praised the India-U.S. partnership. Modi responded with equal politeness, saying he fully reciprocates Trump's sentiments. Yet, beneath the smiles, the tariffs remain in place. For Indian exporters, the reality is that sentiment means little when shipments are blocked by 50% duties. Business leaders say they are tired of mixed signals. One auto parts manufacturer in Chennai said, "We hear sweet words, but on the ground our containers are stuck." We need clarity, not chaos. A diamond exporter in Gujarat said he had to lay off 200 workers last week, explaining that politeness in speeches cannot pay wages. Markets have already reacted. The Indian rupee sank to record lows against the dollar after the tariff escalation. Stock indices like the Sensex and Nifty tumbled as investors pulled out of export-dependent sectors. Analysts warn that Vietnam, Bangladesh, and China are already positioning to capture the contracts India is losing. The irony is that while Trump framed the tariffs as a way to punish India for buying Russian oil, the result may be stronger. India, Russia-China trade flows, and weaker U.S. influence. One American economist noted, "We have effectively subsidized BRICS integration by pushing India into their arms." Domestically, the political debate is intense. Opposition leader Rahul Gandhi has mocked Modi as Narendra Surrender, accusing him of being too soft in defending Indian interests. But Modi frames his response differently. He portrays himself as defending sovereignty against foreign bullying. At rallies, he tells crowds that India will not compromise its independence for short-term gains. Farmers and unions appear to agree, seeing the tariffs as a U.S. attempt to dictate India's energy and foreign policy choices. Their anger fuels the protests, making this a rare moment of alignment between grassroots sentiment and government strategy. From the American side, senior advisors like Peter Navarro have criticized Modi's tilt toward Moscow and Beijing. Navarro claimed he did not understand why the world's biggest democracy would ally with authoritarian regimes, but Indian officials counter that Washington left them no choice. One Indian envoy remarked, "We will not be told who we can buy oil from and who we cannot. That era is sure over." The bluntness reflects a deeper truth. India is asserting itself as an independent power, not a junior partner. Analysts in Delhi say the more Washington pushes, the more India will diversify, even if it means short-term pain. The economic numbers highlight the stakes. Two-thirds of India's $130 billion in exports to the U.S. are now under tariff threat. That includes $48 billion in textiles, jewelry, leather goods, and auto parts. Each of these industries employs millions of workers, many in small workshops and villages. A government study estimates that up to 4 million jobs could be at risk if the tariffs remain. For India's vast labor market, already strained by youth unemployment above 10%, this shock could be devastating. Union leaders in Tirupur, India's knitwear hub, say orders are drying up so fast that entire districts could face mass layoffs. Yet Indian resilience is strong. Already, exporters are reporting new contracts in Europe and the Middle East. Trade promotion agencies are accelerating outreach to Africa and Southeast Asia. The government is expanding programs to help SMEs tap into new regions. And crucially, the shift is not just about short-term survival, it's about long-term independence. Leaders in Delhi increasingly see diversification as essential, arguing that over-reliance on U.S. markets left India exposed to political whims. One senior trade official said, "If we learn anything from this, it is never again to depend 60% on a single partner." The broader geopolitical picture is equally stark. For decades, Washington invested heavily in cultivating India as a counterweight to China. Now, within just 7 months, that partnership has unraveled. Instead of balancing Beijing, India is warming to it. Instead of isolating Moscow, India is deepening energy ties. Analysts call this a textbook case of self-inflicted damage. U.S. tariffs meant to strengthen leverage have instead pushed India into the arms of rivals. As one economist put it, America claimed it wanted a strong India. What it created is an independent India. Meanwhile, Trump's credibility suffers at home and abroad. His exaggerated claims about brokering peace between India and Pakistan, boasting that he stopped a nuclear war, infuriated Modi. Modi flatly denied any U.S. role. Trump's awkward remarks about the N-word, meaning nuclear, were ridiculed in Indian media. For many Indians, it was not just offensive, but laughable, reducing serious issues to a reality show performance. Combined with the tariffs, the effect has been to paint Trump as both insulting and unreliable. By September 2025, the fallout is undeniable. Public protests in India grow larger. SMEs cry for relief, the rupee tumbles, and Modi embraces China and Russia more openly than ever before. Trump, once hoping for a Nobel Prize nomination from Modi, now finds his calls unanswered. The symbolism is brutal, a U.S. president begging for attention and India turning its back. As Indian newspapers declare, this is the end of the so-called U.S. India bromance. The bigger question is what comes next. Experts warn that the tariffs could permanently reshape trade flows. India may never return to being as dependent on the U.S. market as before. The Global South is watching closely, seeing in India's defiance a model for standing up to Washington's economic pressure. The United States, instead of consolidating influence, risks finding itself isolated in a multipolar world. What began with effigies burning in Indian streets now stands as a symbol of something larger, the decline of American leverage and the rise of new alliances. For millions of Indian workers, the struggle is immediate and painful. For policymakers, the lesson is long-term. And for Trump, the humiliation is total, burned in effigy, ignored in diplomacy, and remembered as the president who managed to alienate the world's largest democracy in record time.
The internet went crazy. Is Trump dead? And Trump dead were among the top searches on Google.
Actual acute evidence that something bad happened to Donald Trump. Now, it's true that until today, the president had not spoken publicly in a week.
Donald Trump's latest attempts at showing the American people that he is alive, healthy, and in control have turned into a debacle so embarrassing that it has been compared to a low-budget remake of Weekend at Bernie's. Critics, and even some of his own supporters, are now calling it Weekend at Donnie's a farce filled with recycled photographs, strange social media posts, and glaring contradictions. What should have been a simple reassurance from a sitting president has instead escalated into one of the most bizarre political sagas in modern history. This past Sunday was supposed to be Trump's big moment to silence the rumors. His team released photos of him in the presidential limousine The Beast, followed by a series of images allegedly showing him playing golf in Virginia. But within minutes, sharp-eyed observers noticed inconsistencies that raised more questions than answers. His complexion looked unusually pale. He wore a dark black hat while leaving the White House, but appeared in a different white hat in the golfing shots. Even stranger, the background featured palm trees and impossibility in Virginia. These details immediately sparked suspicion that the images were old, recycled, or manipulated. The story unraveled further when it emerged that the golf outing supposedly took place with former NFL coach John Gruden. Trump claimed in a post great playing golf with John Gruden, a really nice guy and true character. But fact-checkers quickly discovered that Gruden had already posted a nearly identical photo on August 23rd showing him at Trump's Virginia golf course wearing the same clothes. In other words, Trump's so-called proof of life was nothing more than a 2-week-old photograph. Former U.S. Attorney Barbara McQuade summed it up bluntly on September 5th, saying if this evidence were presented in court, it would be laughed out. The inconsistencies are glaring, and they suggest desperation rather than transparency. Even Republican voices expressed unease. A donor in Virginia told Reuters anonymously, if everything is fine, why not appear live? Why recycle old material? This doesn't project confidence, it projects weakness. For many, the idea that the President of the United States could only prove he was alive by posting stale golf photos bordered on absurd. The oddities didn't stop there. Trump's online messages sounded uncharacteristically polished. In one post defending former baseball pitcher Roger Clemens, he wrote that Clemens had steadfastly refused doping allegations. Observers noted that steadfastly is not part of Trump's usual vocabulary. Linguistics experts like Syracuse professor Jennifer Stromer-Galley commented, Trump has a recognizable digital style. Sudden shifts in language suggest someone else is writing these posts. The implication was obvious. Not only were the images fake, but even the words may not be his. Meanwhile, a bizarre video surfaced of garbage bags being tossed from a White House window on Sunday evening. Residents nearby filmed the spectacle and uploaded it to Instagram. The clip showed what looked like staff hurriedly discarding objects into the night. That is not standard procedure, said former Secret Service officer Jonathan Wackrow in an interview with CNN. It suggests a level of chaos inside the residence. Combined with the recycled golf pictures, the video only intensified speculation that something is being hidden from the public. The contrast with President Joe Biden was striking. On the same day, Biden was spotted in Delaware with his grandchildren smiling and eating ice cream. The photos circulated widely, emphasizing normalcy and openness. Side-by-side comparisons of Biden enjoying a double scoop while Trump's team fumbled outdated golf pictures created a devastating narrative. Contrast one leader visible and accessible, the other hiding behind smoke and mirrors. Trump's allies scrambled to defend him, but their evidence fell apart. Charlie Kirk posted angrily that critics were spreading lies, insisting Trump had played golf with Gruden on Sunday. Yet the very image he shared was the same August 23rd photo. Other MAGA influencers circulated older videos, including one from June 28th, pretending they were fresh proof. The recycling of outdated content grew so blatant that even some conservative commentators admitted it was clumsy. Beyond the proof-of-life fiasco, Trump's economic claims raised even bigger alarms. On September 4th, he declared on Truth Social that more than $15 trillion has been invested in the USAA record thanks to tariffs. Yet, the Congressional Budget Office released data on September 3rd showing federal debt at $38.1 trillion with a 2025 deficit projected at $1.9 trillion, both historic highs. If 15 trillion had indeed poured into the Treasury deficits would be shrinking, not exploding. Maya McGuinness of the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget told PBS that number is pure fantasy. If it were real, it would wipe out borrowing needs for years. The fact that debt and deficits are still climbing proves the opposite. Trump also insisted that inflation was under control. He claimed prices are way down with virtually no inflation. But Bureau of Labor Statistics figures show consumer prices rose 4.3% year-over-year in August, with food prices still climbing above 6%. Gasoline remains 18% higher than a year ago, despite minor declines since July. Amanda Chen, who runs a family grocery store in Grand Rapids, Michigan, put it simply, "Every week I'm raising prices on milk and bread. If inflation is zero, then why are my shelves costing more?" According to the latest Consumer Reports survey released on September 4th, the average American household is now paying nearly $785 more per month for the same basket of groceries compared to August 2023. Families in states like Texas and California report even sharper spikes, with electricity and fuel bills rising by 22% year-over-year. Lisa Rodriguez, a single mother running a small diner in San Antonio, said she has had to cut her menu because flour and cooking oil costs are up more than 40%. "When the president says inflation is gone, I want him to shop with me for 1 week," Rodriguez remarked. This disconnect between official claims and lived experience is widening distrust among ordinary citizens. The disconnect is hitting small businesses hardest. A September 4th survey by the National Federation of Independent Business found 62% of SMEs reporting higher costs due to tariffs and 44% delaying hiring or investment plans. Bill Henderson, who owns a metal fabrication shop in Ohio, told reporters, "Steel is up 30% since June. Tariffs were supposed to protect us, but instead I had to lay off 3 workers. We can't survive this chaos." The National Federation of Independent Business also reported that 71% of SMEs expect to raise prices again before the end of 2025, while nearly 1 in 5 small firms plan layoffs if tariffs remain. Restaurant owners are especially vulnerable. As meat and produce imports have jumped in cost in Portland, Oregon, cafe owner Jamie Lee explained that her coffee beans now cost 28% more due to tariff disruptions, forcing her to raise cup prices by 50 cents. "Customers are frustrated, but I don't have a choice," she said. Housing has become another flashpoint. Trump has slashed programs supporting rural homebuyers, HUD confirming that 1.3 million affordable homes in rural counties will lose federal backing. It's ironic that his cuts hit hardest in areas that voted for him, Senator Jon Tester of Montana said on September 5th. Families across Trump's base are realizing that his policies threaten their very livelihoods. Internationally, Trump's isolationist posture has worsened America's position. This week, a major naval buildup near Venezuela heightened fears of confrontation, while in Shanghai, Xi Jinping hosted India's Prime Minister Modi and Russia's Vladimir Putin to reinforce a new alliance. America's absence is China's opportunity, warned European Council President Charles Michel on September 5th. European allies are also quietly drifting away from Washington. Data from Eurostat released September 5th shows EU-Canada trade volumes grew 14% in the first half of 2025, while U.S.-EU trade fell by 7%. French SME manufacturer Pierre Dubois, whose company exports machine parts, told Le Monde, "We now look to Canada for stability." America is unpredictable. German businesses echo the sentiment. The Federation of German Industries warning that erratic U.S. tariff policy is driving investment toward Canada and Asia instead. The credibility gap is widening. On September 5th, Trump posted a digitally generated image of himself surrounded by flames with the caption, "America is hot." What was meant as bravado instead became a meme for collapse mocked across Canadian and European media. Le Monde called it self-parody, bordering on the apocalyptic. Polls confirmed the backlash. A YouGov survey released September 5th found 58% of Americans doubt Trump's recent public appearances are genuine, and only 34% believe his economic claims. Among independents, his approval rating has plunged to -19, the lowest since March 2023. Even Republican strategist Sarah Longwell told NPR, "This isn't about health rumors, it's about trust." Recycling old photos and inflating numbers erodes credibility with moderates who decide elections. For everyday Americans, the disconnect is personal. Families see rising grocery bills, higher mortgage rates, and shrinking federal programs, while Trump posts never felt better from behind White House walls. Detroit auto parts shop owner Carl Ramirez summed up the frustration. "He's telling us life is great while we're drowning. It feels insulting." As of September 6, 2025, the reality is unavoidable. Trump's Proof of Life campaign has collapsed under its own absurdity. The recycled golf photos, ghost-written posts, and false economic claims are more than embarrassing. They are symptomatic of a presidency consumed by denial. At a time when the nation faces historic debt, inflationary pressure, and international isolation, America is led by a man hiding behind outdated images and unbelievable numbers. The lesson is stark. Proof of life means nothing without proof of truth. For millions of Americans, Trump has offered neither. And as the gap between his words and their reality grows, so too does the sense that the United States is stumbling into crisis under a president who cannot even convincingly show he is present.